Welcome back. Yes, after the gremlins earlier this morning, I'm so pleased Professor Julie Coetzee has agreed to make some time out of a busy day to rejoin us for this very, very important interview regarding feedback on the program that they'd undertake she's the Deputy Director of the Center for Biological Control at Rhodes University, and they had the program where they've introduced bugs into the Hartbeespoort Dam with the aim of controlling the hyacinths that have, for me, they are invaders in the Hartbeespoort Dam. As we're talking, we did have a picture there of something I took yesterday, and it looked like it was a bed of flowers. And I said, behind there is a mess of water. A really huge mess of water, which has been overtaken and invaded by water hyacinths on the Hartbeespoort Dam. So let's welcome Professor Coetzee back on, and let's get an update in terms of the control, what's happening on in Harties, as it's fondly known as. Good afternoon, Professor, and welcome to Mid Morning Talk.
Good afternoon, Miriam. Thanks for having me.
So yesterday I was out there. I must say though, it looked a bit less in the dam, although where the bridge is on the Pequanwood side, when you're going to the bridge, I mean, the houses on the left there, they no more have river frontage. My son says they've got garden view now because all you see are this water. You can't even see the water, but it did look less, especially on the Pequanwood side and the Key West side. It was less, and also in the distance in the middle of the dam, uh, there weren't as many floating. I don't know if it's just because the current had pushed them to one side, or in fact, the hokas are doing their job and they enjoying their lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So, can you tell us from your perspective an update in terms of the water hyacinths and the success with your program?
Yes, absolutely. At the moment, the cover on Hartbeespoort is it's about 30%. And it's remained that way since the end of the year. So at the end of December, we got satellite images which showed 30% of the dam was covered. And at the moment, it's 30% covered. So that's quite encouraging because given this time of year, given the heat and the rain and the nutrients in the water, we'd expect the plants to be on a much bigger, to be increasing much faster than they are. And what this is telling us is that the insects are slowing down the rate of reproduction of the plants. So even though there's still a lot of water hyacinth, it's not growing as quickly as it would if there weren't the insects. And if we compare this to a year ago, the end of December 2020, the dam was 47% covered with the plants. And then by the end of January, we started to see the plants being very damaged by the insects and starting to sink. So that's by the end of March, there was virtually no water hyacinth left on the dam. So at the moment, we are a little bit behind, and that's probably because there's been a lot of cloudy weather. It's been a bit cooler, so the insect populations haven't built up as quickly as they did in the past, but the plant populations are also quite low.
And tell me something here. Are you targeting specific areas around the dam? So maybe different areas by Skumansdrift, maybe Pequanwood side, maybe the side of the bridge. So a targeted release, and are you continuing to release, or whatever bugs was intended to be released, have they already been released?
It's a good question. Most of, as you've said, that on the western side of the dam, so towards the coves, towards Lakeland, that area of the dam, that's where the biggest mass of the plant is, and that's because of the prevailing winds. So the winds go from east to west and pushes a lot of the plants into that western side. We're not targeting any areas specifically. We're releasing insects throughout the dam, and our researcher, Dr. Rosalie Smith, who was there last weekend, went and counted the insects at a number of different sites, and the numbers are phenomenal. So throughout the system, the megamelus has built up. At the beginning of November, she was counting about 120 insects per meter squared. Last weekend, she was counting over 4,000 insects per meter squared. So it's a time game. We have to be patient. These, this isn't, it's not a pesticide, a herbicide where you pour it one day and a week later it's all dead. These things have to build up. They have to increase in their numbers. And that's exactly what we're seeing at the moment. And it's exactly what we saw in 2020 and in 2021. So I'm confident that give us another month or two, and the majority of these plants are going to be, will have died.
And tell me something, do these insects then make their way onto the land and affect any of the other plants in terms of land plants or that, or they water-specific insects?
So also a very good question. So these plants are specific, these insects are specific to water hyacinth. They can only complete their life cycle on water hyacinth. But what happens is when the water hyacinth plants get so very damaged by the insects, and you'll see as they get browner and browner, there's no more food left for these insects. And so what they do is they abscond. They literally fly off and leave the plant in search of more water hyacinth. They have to fly over land, and what a lot of households experienced a year ago was swarms and swarms of these insects at their lights at night. A lot of people were very unhappy about it, but we assured everyone that it's a temporary phenomenon. These insects are not going to feed on anything else. They're not going to bite your children. They're not carrying diseases. They're completely harmless. They're merely looking for more water hyacinth. And so if if the swarming does occur again, just know that it's because the plants are no longer healthy enough to support their populations. So the plants are going to die imminently. So if this, we didn't see it in 2020, but we did see it in 2021. So we could see the swarming again, but it's temporary, and we just need to ask people to bear with it. Turn your lights off at night, sweep them off in the morning, and give them a week or two. The insects will be gone and the plants will be gone.
Okay, so I just had a picture up there. That's what I took. Mama, can you put it back? That's what I took yesterday from the bridge on the western side. As you can see, there's no sign that there's a mess of water, a body of water lurking underneath this here. So tell me something, hopefully by mid-February, end of February, we would start seeing them in patches and seeing the water again on the side here as well.
Yes, definitely. So the plants, you'll start to notice yellowy, browning patches. And then as these plants get sicker and sicker or less healthy, they start to sink. The main problem is with the western side is the plants are crammed. They're pushed up so tightly together that they can't actually move around. And these plants hold each other up. And so even though they're effectively dying, they don't sink. They need the wind and the wave action. So it's only once the winds change direction, which is what happens sort of around end of February, March, that we get this movement of the water hyacinth mat, and that we get the sinking of the plants into the water body.
Because it seems on the western side there is a bit of a catchment. It's fine. This is the joys of working from home and blended. We all used to it. Don't worry. I think even now companies now don't bet an eyelid. It's part of our working remotely. One of the I think it comes now with working remotely. It's fine. So, Doctor, because I saw on the western side, it's sort of like a catchment area because the water's ending there and there's no way for them to move. So you're quite right. They packed a lot more tightly than you find on the opposite end or in the middle. And you're quite right in terms of they're sinking, because yesterday the sun was shining beautifully, but you could see underneath the water it was blue and green. And that's when my husband said, I think they're sinking because you can see the reflection of green. And that's the question he's asked me. In fact, he asked me, why didn't I ask you the previous conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any benefit of the water hyacinths on the water? Any benefit they give off in that water? Because he said, did you ask that question? Because everybody's attacking them. So, Professor, is there any benefit to having the water hyacinths there, maybe under control or maybe even a 10% cover, besides the aesthetic and that beautiful purple flower?
Yeah, beautiful but deadly. So the reason that the plant is there, as we said the last time, is because the water is so nutrient rich. So it's got all the runoff from Joburg, from Pretoria, from raw sewage flowing into the water. And there is a perception that the plants are actually doing a good job by cleaning the water, by sucking up a lot of these nutrients into the stems. And then if we remove the plants manually, then we're getting rid of all that pollution. The reality, though, is that the amount of pollution that comes into Hartbeespoort is so great that a master student did a study and showed that the water hyacinth takes up at a maximum less than 0.1% of the pollution going into the dam. So yes, it does take up some nutrients and it can be used to clean some water bodies if they are not incredibly polluted. But Hartbeespoort is so very polluted that their presence actually does nothing. If you think about cleaning up 0.1% of the amount of pollution coming into the dam, there's no benefit at all there. What the plant does do is it blocks out sunlight, and so all the plankton and the algae that live in the water that should be creating oxygen for that system die because they're getting no sunlight. And so you're getting a very anoxic or oxygen poor system, which is why fish like the carp and what are those big ugly barbel thrive.
Barbel, yes, we've got one over the holidays at Hartbeespoort.
So they can live in that very oxygen poor environment, but it completely changes the entire aquatic ecosystem, its presence there. Then there's also another perception that this huge mat of water hyacinth stops the blue-green algae. Now, you haven't been there, you haven't lived at Harties for a long time, but in the early 2000s and then again in the 2010s, there was a terrible pollution by blue-green algae, which is called cyanobacteria. And what this does is it produces a toxin that gets released into the air, and people get sick. It affects your breathing. And there's a perception that the water hyacinth keeps the blue-green algae away by sucking up the nutrients. But again, all it's doing is blocking out the sunlight, which stops the blue-green algae from blooming. So even if you remove water, once water hyacinth goes, there most likely will be another bloom of this blue-green algae.
Professor, before I let you go, two things I need to ask you. Yes, they said there's a secondary invader now besides the water hyacinth. So can you just elaborate a bit on that? And then besides, controlling, keeping the water hyacinths under control, are there any plans in terms of actually treating the water, as you say, it's severely polluted? Because I see people jet skiing there, water skiing, doing water sports there. And after our last conversation, I'm a bit hesitant. Apart from a boat ride on the dam, I'm a bit hesitant to actually even just put a big toe into the water, because you said the amount of pollution there, the waste coming in there and things like that. So, I mean, it's a not clean environment. As you say, it's a huge tourist site. I mean, we could be doing a lot more water sport, a huge money earner there, and it would be in our interest in terms of generating revenue if the water is then some sort of treatment is accompanied in conjunction with controlling the water hyacinth.
Absolutely. Well, the first question, so what is the secondary invader? It's a small fern, an aquatic fern called common salvinia. And after we got control of water hyacinth last year, so towards the end of March, April, we noticed this plant that we knew was on the system. It just exploded. And it took us by surprise because it exploded during winter. And most plants slow down their growth in winter, but this little plant just exploded, and it also took over a huge amount of the water surface of the dam. So it's also from South America, the same as water hyacinth. Hartbeespoort Dam was the only site that we had recorded it from, but we have now found it on other systems in the catchment. So it's on Valkop Dam, it's on Wanakord Dam, and it's also on Roodeplaat Dam. There is no biocontrol agent currently registered for it in South Africa, but that's the work that we are busy doing. Although because we don't have any funding at the moment, we've had to put a halt on that work. So there's the funding issue. What we are focusing our efforts on is keeping Megamelis, the water hyacinth bug, going and sending that out as often as we can. I didn't answer you a little bit earlier about are we still releasing insects? And the answer is yes. A number of rearing stations have been set up at various estates around the dam, and they are releasing thousands of these insects at the coves, at Lakeland, and then a private one at Ifafi. So we are constantly releasing these insects, and we are monitoring the system as much as we can, given our funding constraints. And then you asked me about cleaning the water. I wish that's something that I could do, that I could be responsible for. It's obviously a Department of Water and Sanitation. It falls under their responsibilities. The systems have degraded so much over time that there really just has to be such a big overhaul of all the water treatment works in that whole Gauteng northwest area. So the big thing is to put pressure on your municipalities and put pressure on your local Department of Water Affairs to get those wastewater treatment works functional. If we can clean what's coming into the dam, it will be so much easier to actually clean the dam and then keep it clean.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking it's a dam. It's not a river, it's flows. A dam is a controlled body of water, a mass of water, and before it gets there, you can put a mechanism in place to clean it. So it's not really difficult to do in terms of logistics, but like so many things, funds get misappropriated and things like this. And I think this is what we sit as we see what happens is a consequence of misappropriation of funds. But definitely, that's my producer's homework is to get somebody in that area under that portfolio and interview them, and let's see if we can put pressure on them in terms of getting that the water purified. And tell me something in terms of your funding. I know last time you spoke, you said you're doing crowdfunding and that, and I take it that you still require a lot more funding, and probably then if you get funding, you can open more sites along the dam where we could release Megamelis. Are you still looking for that funding, and how
Yes,
can we assist?
we are. So our Thunder Fund campaign ran up until about 2 weeks ago, and we managed to raise 100,000 Rand, which we were a bit disappointed. We thought we would raise more given what a high profile dam Hartbeespoort is, but we're so grateful for that 100,000 that we did raise. And what that allowed us to do is it's allowed us to keep employing our technicians who rear the insects in Grahamstown and then send them out to Hartbeespoort. What we're doing at the moment is we're in talks with quite a few stakeholders around Hartbeespoort who are trying to. What I've done is I've written up a proposal and a budget, and so we are talking with these stakeholders about various people, institutions, businesses, you name it, who have a vested interest in the dam, providing funding to this group that will come directly to our project. So it doesn't go through a middleman. It doesn't pay for any middleman's salaries or any NPO. A lot of NPOs do amazing work, but obviously people who work for NPOs have to be paid. So this money would come straight into the Centre for Biological Control's account, which we can then use solely for work at Hartbeespoort Dam. And I can give you the details of that after this.
Yes, off air you can do this. So any interested stakeholders, be it body corporates, residents association, even businesses out in Hati, especially those that are near the dam itself, please, I would like to share this, and we'd like to support you in your sterling work, because you know what, for me it's a beautiful area of our country, especially landlocked Gauteng and Northwest. It's a place where you can go. It's a beautiful area, and I feel passionate about it. If we can get the water hyacinths control get Department of Waterworks to at least start investing in getting the dam clean and free of the pollutants, or maybe keep it under control. I can foresee in terms of tourists and people coming there and utilizing the dam a lot more, having lots of boat rides there, water sport, things like that. There's just so much avenue for revenue there, and this all depends on now getting the dam healthy again. Thank
Yes.
you for your efforts and please convey our gratitude to your team, the
I will.
technicians,
I
the
will.
PhD students, everybody
Yes.
who's there, because at the end of the day, I say I love hearties, and as my daughter-in-law says, home is where the hearties is. So we love, yeah. So take that one there. So we love hearties, and I am definitely going to share this interview with the residents of Hearties and the supporters of Hearties and those that take frequent Sunday or Saturday afternoon drives to Hartbeespoort Dam, because we all love Hearties. And I'd like to maybe just chat again in March with you in terms of how the project was going and monitoring that. But thank you for your time in rejoining us after that earlier technical glitch. Much appreciated. And if you ever down there, please do hook up with me. We'd like to just be on the dam with you to learn a lot more. But it's been informative and inspiring and educational as always. This is Professor Julie Coetzee. She's a Deputy Director of the Center for Biological Control at Rhodes University. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks.
And with that, I thank you for indulging me and giving me of your time, the privilege of your time. And also, we are a bit late. I thank Mohammed for working into his lunch. Until next week, peace and blessings, and may you be under the mercy and the protection of the Almighty.